Okay, we'd like to get started with the next panel. It is about education for innovation and entrepreneurship. If I have the slides here, okay, so the next slide. All right, I can do that once. Okay, so basically the people in the panel, I mean, that's me, I'll introduce myself. We have Benny Zeevi, who's already introduced himself partially. He's the head of the HTIA, High Tech Israeli Association. He's also venture capital. He's also an MD, right? MD, where he's done a lot of things in his life, and he's also interested in education. Okay, so he's going to tell us a specific story about a smart camp for life sciences. That's his specialty. Okay, so he's going to tell us about that. We have Harry Euclid here from the Technion, who focuses mostly about financing of entrepreneurship. He will speak about, he has a lot of things he can talk about, but he's going to speak specifically about a program of education for entrepreneurship, which is led in a third world country. Ilanit Kabesa-Cohen from Nestle Awesome, she's the head of innovation there. She's also related to Bezalel. She will try to actually generalize and talk about content for innovation, myths and rules for innovation. And what I'll do now is actually open, okay? So what I'd like to do now is actually set up the stage, a very broad stage for education of innovation. And then I'll tell you again about a specific program for education, which I'm actually leading, okay? So the idea is that all of us, that the first three speakers will speak about specific examples. Ilanit is going to try to generalize, and then we'll have a discussion with you, okay? That's the plan. Okay, so just a few words about myself. So today I'm the director of a new MBA, a relatively new MBA program at the Tel Aviv University. It focuses on management of technology, innovation, and entrepreneurship. My PhD is actually in physics, and it's from the Tel Aviv University. After that, I went through a long way, including also getting a second degree in management of technology at MIT, working in the US, coming back to Israel, working in corporations, startup companies, and whatever you like. I also worked at IBM for 5 years, so I feel very close to the IBMers here. And in IBM, I started leading a practice for innovation management. So I consulted large companies on how to manage innovation. I have my own consultancy, and about 3 years ago, I took over starting up and managing this new MBA program. So that's my background. And what I'd like to do now is basically talk a little bit about trends. I'm a great believer in trends and the importance of understanding the great context for whatever it is that you do. I think it's almost impossible to innovate unless you have a good perception of the largest context. So I'll speak about that a little bit. And then I was looking for a framework for a discussion about education for innovation. So I'm going to present the framework very shortly. And then a quick description of the MBA program, just to give it some content. Okay, so that's what I want to talk about. And I was thinking about trends, okay, and I must confess I didn't do a deep research on that, but I took some of the trends, of the leading trends in every related area. And I think for education, we see a lot of very interesting things happen today in the world. I must also say about education, it became a very hot topic. Everybody likes to talk about education. People like to get involved in education. And it's also because people feel that they want to share what they know. I think we understand the importance of innovation. I must say also that I don't think anyone really understands how you can make money out of education. That's a whole different topic. But education is important. And I think if you look at some of the leading trends in education, so one obviously is education is becoming digital and global. We have things like Coursera, which is completely digital and global. You have obviously things like TED. And I think TED is interesting also in the sense that it changes not only the actual channel, it also changes the way that the information is being transferred. Okay, we're actually getting used to a new format which is shorter. The presentations are different, and everything, actually the whole dialogue looks different. Okay, so it's not just how do I move things from the real world into the different channels, but I think it changes the way we do that. Okay, so I think that's going to be a major change. And also I think the other thing that I'm seeing from where I am is that it's obviously that we need to have some link between the academic world and the hands-on world. Okay, if you look at, and there are actually a lot of activities like accelerators and things like that are trying to bring the hands-on education, I think you also see the need to also have the deep insight into the deep academic insight. So I think these are some of the leading trends as I look at the education that relates to our world. If you look at entrepreneurship, we can say a lot of things about entrepreneurship, but basically I think, for example, the interesting trends we're seeing today is that people understand that we need the ecosystem for that. Obviously, it became a very obvious world. 10 years ago, for example, it wasn't the case. And also I think that the current cool structures, for example, would be accelerators. As the manager of the program, people come and speak to me. And maybe 2 years ago, they came and spoke about different kind of financing. Today, everybody comes and presents a new accelerator of a different type. I mean, I know maybe, I don't know, like around 20 accelerators. If I know 20, then it means there must be many more of them. But basically, that becomes something of interest, okay? So we see a lot of accelerators as one of the cool structures. I guess it also means that in 3 years, we'll see a different structure, okay? Because it keeps changing. The emphasis of the structures is changing. We also, and as it comes to entrepreneurship, we're seeing a great emphasis. Yankee spoke this morning, for example, about social, the green, the smart world, okay, that IBM is a great player in that. That also leads maybe to an interest in new areas, okay, new domains of entrepreneurship. Life sciences, fintech, financial technology, which Israel is actually quite strong at, clean tech, and so on. And as far as innovation, we're also seeing some trends in innovation. One of them, I think, is a leading trend in innovation and innovation consulting, is actually a merge between design thinking and strategic thinking. Okay, so we're seeing companies today that merge these two aspects, and we're actually seeing, and it brings a whole new wave to the thought leadership of innovation management. And also one thing, when we speak about corporations, they understand that they need to have innovation structures and innovation processes. Almost all large organizations today, they have some sort of ways to connect with the outside world, what we call open innovation, and so on. Okay, so these are some of the trends we're seeing, and they should influence basically us when we think about education for innovation and entrepreneurship. So basically, just a few words now about the program that I'm running. So the main idea behind the program was to take the strength of the Israeli ecosystem, and it was actually before the book Start of Nation was published, but it's clear there's a very strong ecosystem for entrepreneurship in Israel. The idea was to take that strength that really characterizes the actual world, and to bring some of that to the academia. Okay, this was actually the idea. And how do we do that? So how do we try to do that? I'll tell you in a minute. The other thought is about when we want to talk about education, what would be some of the main pillars that we want to think about? And I came up with these 4 ones. Obviously, you can come up with different 4 ones, or with 3 ones, or 5 ones, or whatever. 4 is a good number, okay? And the things that I thought about that you need to think about, first would be the students, okay? Who is your audience, basically? Who are you going to educate? And it's not a very trivial question frequently. Then you need to think about the structure of the program, the courses, the length, the days, what it is, the structure of the program. And I'll tell you again why it's not trivial and what choices we made in our program. You need to think about the content that you will teach, okay? It's going to be academic, hands-on. What will be the actual content? And of course, you need to think about your ecosystem, okay? How you connect with the ecosystem. I think it's important for all education systems, but especially when you talk about entrepreneurship and innovation. Okay, so that's the framework. And let's speak about this new program as an example of that. So it started 3 years ago, or in 2000, almost 3 years ago, 2010. This October, we actually started the 3rd year, okay, the 3rd machzor. There's no good English for that. The 3rd year of the program. We now have the first graduates of the program, and 2 of them, at least one of them is sitting here. Then the other one ran home. That's fine. You're not a graduate yet. You just started. Okay, so we have some of the students here, but it's a fairly new program still. Every year we have 60 to 100 students. We started with 64 students. The 2nd year we had 100 students. This year we have 72 students. We try to really mix the academic excellence of Rekanati, who's I think the people from other institutions, but it's a very good business school. Okay, so we care about the academic quality of the program, and we also try to bring the hands-on experience, and we'd like to be embedded in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And how do we do that? So very quickly, here's for example, okay, distribution of our students, and this is for the second year, okay, and it seems to be fairly similar to what we see in the third year as well. It's quite different from what we saw in the first year. So what you see here, basically, you see that about 40% of the students, they work in corporations. Okay, and it's not a big surprise. That's where most of the high-tech people work, okay? They work in large companies. And by the way, you can see the real names of the companies, okay? It just gives you a sense, okay, of the breadth and the, of the breadth and the wealth that we have in the program. You see that about 20%, only 20% work in startup companies. We won't do a big discussion about that, but I guess you might expect a larger number. But still, I think it's representative. Okay, so we have people working in startup companies. We have small firms, and that section I think is going to grow. Small firms would be services firms. Okay, so it would be small like startup, but not necessarily with the growth opportunities of a startup company. And we see more and more small firms in general in the economy. So I'm not surprised we see them also here in the distribution of our students. And of course, we see the public sector. Public sector, mostly the army. Okay, mostly the army. Very different kind of positions in the army, yes.
Do you have numbers about from the 42% of people coming from corporates, how many of them, once they graduate, they leave their company and start their own?
Sure, it's an excellent question. It's an excellent question. Okay, first, I don't have numbers because we only have now the first graduates, okay? So they just graduated and they actually still didn't get their diplomas yet, so it's very fresh, very new. I have two things to say about that. First of all, the entrepreneurs, they actually hide in all the pie. Okay, many entrepreneurs are actually still in the army. Okay, they do the kind of mandatory service, and at some point they will leave the army and they will become entrepreneurs. Some of them work in large corporations and keep thinking about, and some of them will do that. How they start their own business. Some of them work in startups, but not all of them. I mean, you have to remember that many of the people that work in startup companies are not necessarily entrepreneurs. They have jobs. They have jobs and they get salary, and it doesn't mean that they're entrepreneurs. And for small firms as well. Okay, I mean, we will also see more entrepreneurs, but the way not necessarily in high tech, but also in small firms. Okay, we need more small firms. That's the economy. Yes, that like a question?
Yes, it seems like the world is moving too fast. Sometimes it's too fast for the academia to come over the obstacles that you presented.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the fact that you cannot adopt the program for the students. So how do you overcome that?
Okay, yes, I agree completely. I'll tell you some of the things we do, and it might not be enough, but I'll get to that. Okay, anyway, so now you get an impression of who the students are. I'll just say the average age is 31. You got younger people, older people, with about the average of 5 years of work experience. Okay, so that's the students. The program, how does it actually work? So the students study only on Sundays and Fridays, Sunday afternoon till midnight more or less, and Fridays. It allows people who need to travel for work to do that, okay? So it's actually very concise. The first year, it's mostly the foundation of MBA classes, economics, accounting, marketing strategy, and so forth. The second year is really more about electives of specific topics of interest to our program. In the first year, what we also do is work more about the attitudes of the students. Okay, we do that through bringing guest speakers and various activities. Okay, so that's the first year. The second year is really more the advanced year. And the second year, I must also say, the students begin to realize that one day they will finish the degree, and they start thinking about what's going to be next. Okay, so the second year really gives them now the opportunity to think about what they want to do next and get prepared for that. And by the way, one more thing we're seeing now at the program is, I think that there are more people who, even during their degree, start thinking about moving from the corporations, starting their own business, or even if not that, to do some career change. For example, many people come from a very technology background. They want to move more to the business. Okay, so just today, for example, I asked all the students, how many of them would be interested in moving to product management positions, which is more the business side, and I got lots of replies. Okay, now we're thinking, by the way, how we can help them. But this is sort of what you see about the program. We have, and I'll specify that in a minute, but we have a lot of different things except for the academic courses, and some of them are actually answers to your questions. And the students, what we're looking for is students that first of all have a good academic background, because even if it sounds cool that you have a degree in management of entrepreneurship, innovation, and technology, most of what you do is actually courses, okay? And we need people who can pass the courses. So we actually look at the academic background of people. We want to see they have some practical experience. We don't admit people who just finished their bachelor degree. We don't admit, unless they've done lots of things during the bachelor degree or before the bachelor degree. We like to have some experience. I think for MBA it's crucial. And also we care about the future plans. We really want people where we can be a stepping stone in the future career. And otherwise, we don't really admit them to the program. And I've seen some really excellent people where it became clear through a personal interview, everybody goes through an interview, that they're headed towards financial career and whatever, and we didn't admit them into the program. So what does it look like in terms of content, okay? So the basis is courses, okay? 95% of the time the students spend on academic courses. Some of them would be classic MBA courses, some of them would be advanced courses, but it's courses. That's the main thing they do. And then comes the interesting part, and that's around it. So we get lots of guest speakers, okay? We have, for example, in the first year, this year we're going to have something close to 12 or 14 guest speakers coming during the first year to speak to the students. Some of them would be entrepreneurs, some of them would come from corporations, motivational speakers, you know, all types of speakers basically. Some of them would say the opposite of what others have said, and I think that's cool. It should be that way. We have lots of guest speakers, okay? So that's the first thing. I must also tell you it's very easy to get guest speakers. People want to share, people want to give, people want to meet the students. So it's very easy to do that, and I think it's very valuable. The other thing we have and let me also say one more thing. Some of the electives we have are taught by practitioners. So they have to be within academic standards, but they're actually taught by practitioners. And what we invented is a new structure we call master classes, which is half a day basically to talk about a specific topic with a practitioner. So it's more than a guest talk, but it's less than a whole course, okay? And we can actually bring people from various, people that are doing current things, as opposed to, you can say, academic research. Academic research has a problem because most of it, not all of it, but most of it is actually based on facts. You need to be able to measure things. Now, for example, you have a new area called digital applications, okay? What do you do with that area? I mean, until, you know, it's a fairly new area. It exists for, what, like 3 years? Academia hasn't started to do research on that because it's too new. You need to define the concept, you need to collect data, you need to analyze the data. It takes a long time to do. But I can have master classes with people to talk about applications, for example. No problem, I can do that. And so one thing, I can give that to the students. I'm not compromising the academic quality, okay? Because it's not supposed to be an academic course. I have academic courses of academic quality. Yes?
Microphone, please. Okay, now for the first time maybe.
Yeah.
I listen to Yossi and talk to the microphone. He wants to have me taped once. זה בסדר? ככה? Okay. I've been talking all morning and not using the microphone. You're not the only school doing a degree. Who else is doing? Are you following a structure that is all over the world? Do you have a PhD in the end?
Yeah.
I know you don't, but do you have something like this?
Okay, no. So first of all, it's an MBA. Okay, yes, it's a good question. Even though I might want to I want to leave time to the other speakers as well. But fairly quick, it's an MBA program with no thesis. Okay, so it's not connected to a PhD. A PhD you need to do in a different path, basically. We did look at structures of similar programs elsewhere. Okay, so some of them would be related to the program I did at MIT. We look at Stanford. We look at places like that, even though I think we need to do more. Okay, so it's... anyway, so just to tell you a bit more about the things that we do that are extra, we go and visit companies, for example. When I started this program, I thought we won't visit companies because I thought it's going to be very boring. But you find interesting companies to visit. Okay, you find companies like Nestle, for example, who's doing something physical, so you can go and see what they do and so forth. We also go and visit companies. And in addition, of course, we give some extras like workshops on how to prepare presentations and so on. Okay, so these are the things we do extra, and we can be very flexible and very dynamic here. I can decide every year about the master classes, and I can change that and so on. And as long as I obey the academic quality of the courses, I'm free to do pretty much anything I want. Okay, so that gives the flexibility. The ecosystem, here are some examples of the ecosystem, but we have an advisory board. Benny is a member of our advisory board. We have a program friends forum. It was about 60 people from the industry who come and meet with us about twice a year and are also part of the program. They want to meet the students, help them, and so on. So we build that as well, and I think it's working very well. The things we give them, okay, so first of all, for example, as an example, our program actually leads the mobile forum application for our business school. It's something that we do. Okay, we also want to influence the education in those areas, and and that's why we're always open to hear what people want and what they want us to do. And I think we also try to build a unique network, basically, of academics and people from the industry. Okay, so that's really what we're trying to do. And as an example, we've had in September, we had an unconference. Okay, I'm sure you're familiar with the topic. An unconference of the program. It was very stressful to put that together. We had to explain everybody, the students, what it means. We had to gather guests and so on. The idea is it's an open conference with no agenda in advance. The students actually do the conference by themselves. You can see the agenda on the board. It starts with a whiteboard. Yossi Vardi was very involved in that. He actually came and spoke to our students before the conference to explain why this is important, okay? And I think it was important that he did that. Yair Sarusi, Bank Hapoalim, they hosted us. So that's how it started. You can see some of the activities here. Pretty cool. One of the students had a workshop on wine tasting. He brought bottles of wine, and he basically did it twice because there was very high demand for that particular workshop. Another student taught the students how to create a matos minial. No, it's not origami. It's a paper airplane. But it's a very specific model that can fly very well. Okay, not like the one we know. Some people talk about whiskey distillery, try to also construct a business model. We had the students playing music. One of them talked about the wall of the Pink Floyd and also built the wall just to demonstrate. One of the guests actually brought this homemade Segway and talked about innovation and what does it take. We had this future helmet and so forth. Okay, so we sort of keep doing this additional things. In general, I think, and I want to finish with that, I think that the concept of the program is working. They're always, and it's working. We will get a bit more global this year with an exchange, with a student exchange program. I still think we need to do more, and I keep thinking about all the time about what are the things we need to do more. So that was about my particular part. Now I'd like to have Benny, you want to come and talk? Talk about, and he has no slides. Okay, so we'll put it out.
Good afternoon. So I didn't prepare any presentation. I didn't know that I have to. But anyway, I'll tell you. So in my daily job, I'm a venture capitalist. And currently, I'm the co-chairman of the Israeli high-tech organization. I come from the life science side. In the last 15 years, I spent in the life science sector, 5 years in a company as a VP Business Development and Medical Director, and 10 years ago a venture capital asked me to join, so I became a venture capitalist. I'm enjoying it very much, by the way. But anyway, and prior to that, I was practicing medicine for 22 years. As a pediatric cardiologist here in Israel, I was the head of the department at the Schneider Children's Hospital, and I was trained here and at Boston Children's Hospital, Harvard, and being a staff person there for 11 years. So while I was head of the department here, every summer, August, September, I spent at Harvard or the Boston Children's Hospital. So it was a lot of fun, but the middle of my life, I decided maybe I can do something else. And I was, while I was practicing medicine, I didn't have private clinic, nothing. I was consulting medical device companies and venture capital funds, so I was connected to the industry anyway. So, but I have a special passion for academia, and I think that the connection between academia and industry is a key important for both for the industry and as well for the academia. So, and now at our organization, the IATI, we have two committees. One is actually to promote education and relative sciences that actually affects the industry, and the other thing is another committee is dealing with academia-industry relationship, which I think that have to be tightened. I'm involved with Iris program, I still tell Iris all the time that we have to have more involvement of the industry in the program, but anyway. So I just want to tell you about a small program that we are doing at the Tel Aviv Business School that actually I think some of the people from the industry actually have to be proactive and identify needs and actually go to the academia and do some program together. So as I'm from the life science industry, maybe you know that the life science industry in Israel is a young industry. The young industry, it lags about 10 or 15 years after the high-tech industry, and we don't have many we have almost none of the R&D centers. Actually, in Israel, it's not like the high-tech that you have IBM and Apple and you name it. About 70 companies are having the R&D centers in Israel. So that's one thing. The other thing, it's a young industry, and we don't have many large Israeli companies that can actually grow managers. So being in this industry, I always noticed that we have great scientists, great science, great physician, great engineer that are always having those great ideas, but they don't know how to bring it to the market. So I thought what we can do for that. And being at Harvard, in Harvard there is a Harvard Healthcare Initiative. So I looked at the internet and I saw who is the head of the Healthcare Initiative. I wrote him an email, told him, I'm Benny, I want to do some program in Israel. He said, let's talk tomorrow for 2 hours. Apparently he was a Jew, but anyway. But we spoke I told him about my ideas. It was all theoretical. He referred me to Kellogg, Stanford, Biodesign, Duke, Wharton. I spoke with all the deans, and I sat in my office. I wrote 3 pages, and I looked at the internet, who is the dean of the business school in Tel Aviv. And why Tel Aviv? It could be Haifa, Jerusalem. I thought, most of the industry is in the middle country, so it has to be Tel Aviv. So I looked at the website, who is the dean of the business school, and I found his name, his email. I wrote him an email. I said, that's my idea. Let's meet for a discussion. So I met him. It was Simon Benigna, who knows him at that time, but I know many people know him here. And he was looking at me like that. He said, it's an interesting idea. So I told him, I have a daily job. I need some academic director of the program. So for a year, he tried to bring an academic director for the program from the university. All kinds of people that had some connection with a startup or entrepreneurs, but they start telling me, in this program for life science manager, you have to teach them biochemistry, maybe medical engineering also. I told them, that's not my idea. Idea is, and the name of the program that I wrote in my 3 pages to him was from idea to commercialization. We want to do a real business-oriented course. I told him, just give me the infrastructure, I'm going to bring the money, I'm going to bring the faculty, don't worry. And as I told you, it's not just we don't have experienced manager. We have few of them in Israel, but not so many, and less so in the academia. There is no one in the academia can actually teach life science management. No one that I know of. So I told him, don't worry, I'll bring the faculty, just bring me the infrastructure. So anyway, finally we found someone from Wharton who was willing to come to Israel and be my co-director, and the rest is history. Since then, we just finished, and we have one graduate here. I didn't know she's going to be here, but anyway, we just finished our 6th program. We do it once a year for life science manager entrepreneurs. About the program, between 30 and 40 entrepreneurs are coming. We bring more faculty. This year we had a problem because of the operation we had a few weeks ago, but anyway, every year we bring at least 20 top industry people to Israel just for this program, for 3 days. And what I learned is that top executives really like to teach and like to share, and someone mentioned it before, like to share their ideas, and you name it. We brought the head of the FDA and the people from the big corporate, Medtronic, J&J, Edwards, Merck, you name. We brought the few of the best VCs, life science VCs from abroad, and repeat entrepreneurs, and we had, you can look at our website, but we had the really best people in the industry coming. Even Jeremy Levine, before he became the CEO of Teva, was coming to our course every year to teach partnering and agreement between corporate and young companies. So, and the network, it's not just they teach you business-wise and really business-oriented, but the network for the entrepreneurs is huge. So what I think is that actually sometimes it has to come from the industry. People have to be proactive and build programs, and there is a need there for, I don't know, clean tech, fintech, whatever it is, but people have to be proactive and take it. It's a hobby. I don't get anything from that. I'm spending a lot of time organizing it. It's just running now for the 6th time. And that was just the basic, our vision, and it's hopefully next year it will materialize, is to build the Life Science Management Center at the Tel Aviv Business School, where we do not just teaching and longer courses of 5 to 6 weeks, so every MBA student, wherever program, entrepreneurship MBA, regular MBA, software MBA, could take courses in life science management for 5 to 6 weeks. We'll bring faculty from abroad that actually taught those courses. We'll take 2 post-PhDs from Israel and teach them how to do these courses so they can take over this program over the years. And we have a potential donor, and hopefully next year we'll start this program at the Tel Aviv Business School. So if something comes from the industry and someone that knows what are the needs and what are, so it's everything, if you could dream on something, you can do it. That's my story, basically. Any questions?
I think Kate will take questions in the end. Is that
Okay.
Okay, so now it's my turn. The truth is, my presentation is not as Iris presented. Something that we do there is actually a more fundamental question which I want to share with you. And it was actually, I choose this subject because it is very important for the broad European audience which we have here. You'll see that one of the models that I'm using here is was adopted by United Nations Economic Commission for Europe as a reference model for the developing countries. So expecting hundreds of European attendance, that is what I choose. But since everybody introduces himself, I will say one sentence. My background is not so interesting. My wife will say even that is boring, but that's probably because she's my girlfriend from age of 16. So what else can I add to excitement there? However, about 35, 40 years ago, I was an electronics engineer. I spent 30 years, like many others in Israel, in high tech, and I became an academic, a scholar. At the age of 50, I decided that where we get stuck with our startups is because lack of understanding of the economics and financial aspects in the managing startups. I started bothering a lot of professors in the Israeli universities with questions which they couldn't answer. Therefore, I decided to start my PhD at the age of 50 in economics at the Hebrew University. So when I ended this stuff, I found that actually some of my questions, actually all my questions, were interesting for my colleagues in the top universities at Harvard and Stanford. So I decided to stay a little bit longer. So I'm a very young professor. And my area, my field of research and also of teaching is economics of innovation and entrepreneurial finance. So I'm an excellent engineer in economics and an excellent economic in engineering, and probably a mediocre one in both of them. This is my background. Now about the Technion, I'm now with the Technion. I've been with the Hebrew University for a couple of years, and now I'm at the Technion. The Technion has programs like this, but since everybody talks about the startup nation, I decided to add just a couple of facts. Technion apparently is one of the factories of entrepreneurs in Israel, and I'll give you just a couple of facts from a recent research. 25% of out of the 67,000 graduates of the Technion launched at least one startup in their career. And, sorry? 25%. One if any four graduates started at least one startup. Well, you may challenge the data, but there are professors who did. It is impressive. Yeah, I'm very impressed, by the way, about the Technion. I'm very impressed. 11,000 out of 67, which is about 15%, I think, worked in startups, either as owners or so on. Two-thirds of the NASDAQ registered Israeli companies were funded by Technion graduates. And the aggregated annual economic output of Technion graduates altogether, it counts for more than $20 billion. So, and this is official data. I mean, these are indeed the facts. But again, we do this at the Technion more like a kind of, way of living. Okay, but my scope was not to sell or to present the Technion. You are obviously invited to join Tel Aviv is a great university, the business school is great, and Benny is great, and Simon is great, and I teach there as well in the international MBA program. But this, yes.
I will just say that there are other programs in other schools as well. I mean, I talked about Tel Aviv University because I'm from the Tel Aviv University. We have other institutions, the Technion, Betzalel, the Hebrew University, Ben Gurion University, IDC.
Frankly, I think the best MBA program is the Tel Aviv University. We are not so good in running programs. At least, again, I'm not, as I said, I'm not really strong in education. I'm more like a kind of engineer. But I'm apparently okay with research in the economics of innovation. And one of the questions is, what is indeed the role of academia in the process of entrepreneurial capital formation in economies like Israel, right? Especially is important for developed economies, I mean very intensive entrepreneurial economies like Israel or California or other, but it's also important for the developing economies because entrepreneurship is one of the main growth engines, economic growth engines that one can invest in. So governments who want to close the gap, let's say, between East Europe and West Europe in order to avoid another war or something like happened twice in Europe because economic differences. We know the economists that it's better to invest the marginal capital in entrepreneurship because this is the way to close the gap. And the question is, what is the role of the university? We've seen today at least a couple of various angles. Technology transfer, right? So the Technion, we have these professors inventing all kinds of stuff, basic research, sometimes applied research. All universities have technology transfer offices. Is this the role? But now we see that universities are asked to do education in entrepreneurship. Is it correct? Is it what they should do? What about the students? I mentioned that even if we have a couple of Nobel Prize winners at the Technion and the great scientists, and we contributed to the all kinds of technologies which are at the front edge of the Israeli tech industries, the main production engine entrepreneurships are our students, are our graduates. We contribute a lot more to the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Israel through our students than through our professors. So what is exactly the balance? I think I should use this stuff to move. I have only a couple of slides. I should go probably the other way around. Okay. So academia today is involved in various areas. Okay, we have this research departments in entrepreneurship. I belong to one. I don't know. I think that you have some of this as well. Every university today has an entrepreneurship and innovation department. We have two centers, an entrepreneurship center and an innovation management centers. You heard this morning Mia Erez talking about statistics in intrapreneurship in the large companies. Yesterday, Oded Shmueli, our VP of Research, explained that government must support academia because the basic research and so on. We organize conferences and we publish journals and we have all kind of stuff like this. This is one aspect, but does it really create any impact on the ecosystem? This is the first question. Then we have these technology transfer offices, fine. The industry is monetizing what our professors are developing, probably too little in my opinion. I mean, Oded yesterday was very proud about the contribution of the technology transfer office of the Technion to the budget of the Technion. As a practitioner, I know that it's just a small part of the real potential, but whatever. Professors are happy with $30,000 to have some new equipment in the labs. Therefore, their business horizon is quite short, and this is the effect. And then there are many students' extracurricular events that both in all universities are organizing. Actually, incidentally, we have here Rachel. Rachel is a student at the Tel Aviv University, but she's the coordinator of the Young Entrepreneurs program in Jerusalem. At that time, the Entrepreneurship Center at the Hebrew University is actually supporting, and these are students working and doing this kind of activities. So there are all kinds of stuff like this. The question is this what academia should do or not? I'm not asking you. I'm going to give you this model and as a basis for discussion. And what we talk here is about, again, we are in an economy. Let's say economy is, let's say, a country or a region or something. Economy. Israel is an economy for this purpose. And there are these three elements: research, teaching or education, and outreach, going and bringing the entrepreneurs into the process, which are the basis, the three elements through which it's possible to create a entrepreneurial capital formation process in an economy. And how it works, the outreach is obviously increasing the basis of the pyramid, so that we bring more people into the entrepreneurial process if we reach them. In Israel would be, let's say, if we bring the Jewish Orthodox man and the Arab woman into the process, that will be a big increase of the basis, the base of the pyramid. Teaching creates actually better entrepreneurs. I mean, those who take this meet and various practitioners and educate themselves are better entrepreneurs once they join the process. And obviously there is the research, understanding where we are, on which areas shall we invest, listening to practitioners to understand where to go. This is the third element. The real problem, yes.
Tomorrow we'll have Eden Shochat. He'll tell you that he didn't have to have any teaching. Mark Zuckerberg didn't have to have any teaching in order to do his entrepreneurship. So don't put it like an axiom or something that is for sure. There will be very many successful entrepreneurs who will tell you the opposite, that actually they were expelled from school. I didn't have to have any special program or school.
First of all, this is not an axiom. Norma, this is not an axiom. Secondly, I agree with Zuckerberg. Yankee Margalit also was thrown away from the school in the high school. They almost threw me away from the school as well. So I don't say, I'm talking here about an ecosystem. You need Zuckerbergs and some people who know how to manage a process, for example. Otherwise, I mean, just daring to create a program to rank the girls in the college, as Facebook started, wouldn't bring Facebook where it is. There are other as well. So here we speak about having all this mix. I'm not saying how to build an entrepreneur. Anyway, the real problem is not how to impact the entrepreneurship system, because it's always possible to create 1,000, 2,000, how many entrepreneurs we want at a time, and some of them will disappear or whatever it will be. The real problem is to have a sustainable entrepreneurial capital formation system, and that it requires a holistic approach to all these aspects. In other ways, you need to educate a certain amount of entrepreneurs at a certain time. Given the base you have to have certain understanding exactly if do we need now large companies or small companies or other questions. All this must work together in order to have a sustainable process. And actually, what we see that happened in the successful areas, like Silicon Valley, like the East Coast, like Israel, and not so much in Kansas, in other places, is that processes work in this way. So the academia, as a cluster of players in such areas, okay, may have a positive impact, being just, either professors or just working with the community or just doing education programs like this might have actually a negative effect in building the process, because resources may be spent in the wrong way. That is this model was, as I said, adopted by United Nations Economic Commission for Europe for implementation in East European countries. And indeed, Bulgaria, Romania, Hungary, all these countries, they are now moving in this way and started closing the gap to the West. The point is, we shall go, this is the last one, as you can see, we shall go, leave the ivory tower and go there and do entrepreneurship. And this is what we actually do. So, a base for discussions.
And our last speaker, Ilanit.
And how do I get my presentation? Thank you. Hello. It will be very, very quick. How is it working? Oh. Yeah, got it. There are mainly, let's say, two big questions regarding education of innovation. One is how we teach, or how we innovate the education of innovation. One is how we teach, and the other one is what we teach. And I would like to speak very, very shortly about what we speak, the content on innovation, and I will explore that quickly through my own experience. Currently, in the past 2 years, I am working as the Innovation and Business Development Manager of Awesome Group, which is Nestle Israel. And I have learned in the past 2 years about innovation success and how to integrate innovation processes into the organization day-to-day lives and many other things, but we'll stay with that. Strangely, my background is actually in fashion design, yes. And from fashion design, I learned about emotional engagements with products. None of us, let's say about women, none of us are buying dress or a garment because we must have, because of its functional value, obviously. So I learned that through fashion. I learned also about dreams and desires of consumers. I learned about fast systems because the fashion system is actually one of the fastest ones. Through fashion, I have arrived to trend research. I started with fashion trends, and I've arrived to consumer research, sociocultural trend research, and through that I learned about relevance of products to people's life, relevance of innovation to people's life. I learned about the cultural context of an idea and about future scenarios, how you work with trends to project the future, to think about the future, to create maybe the future. And in the past few years, I just recently actually finished 4 years of managing the MDES program, one of the MDES programs in Bezalel Academy for Art and Design. It's a master in industrial design, and it was called About Design. And through that, I learned through my students and working with the faculty professors about design thinking, about how to grow creativity, how to develop ideas, what are creative processes, about experimenting with different methodologies, and it was really, really lovely, very, very interesting. And together, actually, this is my innovation toolbox. It's a bit strange, it's not the average toolbox, but it brought me to think about what we are teaching when we are teaching innovation. So I've learned to question a few myths that I hear about innovation, and I hear it from both industry practitioners, from academies, different academies, and from entrepreneurs. Innovation must start with strategy. This is something that we teach mainly when we go into innovation in organizations, and I say, not necessarily. Innovation can start anywhere. Therefore, we must teach alternative views on how to start innovation, how to observe things, how to experiment, inspire yourself, how to think analogies from different industries. Innovation should fit strategy, but it also can change strategy. And I say ideas first and strategy later. I hear this I hear that too many times. There's no problem with ideas, there's too many ideas. The problem is finding a good idea is not a problem is execution. Well, this is, as far as I can see, this is half true. Executing innovation is not easy, it's very difficult, especially when regarding not incremental innovation, but big innovations. But there is a huge problem, as far as I'm concerned, with comparing with how we teach growing ideas in design academies and how we teach growing ideas in other disciplines. There's a big difference. What is this idea? How it could be developed? How does it touch people's life? How it could be in the next few years? How it could be? What possibilities we have to these ideas? How this is actually the art of exploring an idea, and I think here we can use for example, two tools that are arriving from design and art discipline, which is one is what if, the question of what if we do this and that. This is kind of a scenario planning, and of course adaptive thinking, which is to learn to try to create interesting hypotheses about the future. You know that, right? Show me the numbers. How can I know if this is a good idea or not a good idea? Show me the numbers, bring me the data. Well, it is, for me, it is something we can argue about. It is important to bring the data, but if we tackle an idea just with analytic tools, we will We might have the problem of destroy the idea or of not understanding the real nature of the idea. Information, there is the essence and the importance of working also with qualitative tools, also with trying to understand what question to ask, what is the nature of the idea, how to observe, where to look for the information. And information finding is, for me, also a kind of an art. You need to know where to find the information, what to ask, how to reframe the question, what methodologies to use. And for me, it means also, next to the very scientific-oriented education, we must have more humanistic view of the education of innovation. The fourth one, we have just one more. Fourth one is innovation process must be systematic. There is a kind of understanding that it's a formula. We'll teach you 1, 2, 3, and you get an innovative idea. Wrong. The innovation process should be disciplined. They make a difference between disciplined process and a systematic process. Should be disciplined. There should be a clear framework. There should be a freedom, but also something that is very fixed. Innovation is not a scientific formula. It can't be. It won't be. But we can teach the nature of the innovation process and how to deal with its ambiguity, with its continuous change. How to deal with the unknown as it is with the innovation processes. For me, this is something that is very, very missing link in how we teach innovation. And I'm sure that this has been said here more than once. We need more scientists, more engineers to promote innovation. We do. I can't neglect that. But we also need visionary leaders, creative leaders, integrative thinkers, people who will understand the world, people who will challenge conventions, people who will moderate conflicts, people who will engage in different disciplines. And I'm speaking, this is not just about STEM as the basic of education, but we should add to that the art side of the art and the humanistic side of innovation. This is my opinion. You can disagree with me. And I think when I think about the next stage of innovation, of education and innovation, is I think we should actually grow and teach to grow creative leaders. Those leaders that will lead creatively and will lead creativity. And for me, it means rethinking about the basics of how we teach innovation today in order to reach this point. Thank you.
Questions? Yes.
Work? Yes. So, Benny, you specifically touched about the fact that we have a problem with how we grow executives and sort of a shortage of managerial experience. You touch differently, the rest of the panel also touched a little bit this topic when you talked about, when your final thoughts about how leaders promote innovation within their own organization. And when I'm looking at the large corporation, the largest one in Israel, Teva, after the previous CEO left, the Teva board, when he decided to leave, the Teva board was looking for almost 6 months until they poached Jeremy Levine. And this has made the Teva today, its top 2 executives are actually non-Israelis. And this is, yeah, that is correct. Actually, they did actually say a few of them, this is actually a huge problem. And I'd like, Benny, I'd like you specifically, but I also would like to know from the panel in large, there is a difference between how we make managers and how we make corporate managers. There's a difference in usually in this is in Europe. There's actually a school for corporate managers which is different than the regular MBA programs. And I would like your perspective of how can Israel actually grow managers to grow corporations.
I'm not going to comment about Teva, but anyway, I think there are two different disciplines. You know, even in the high-tech industry, I think, not just in life science, but in the high-tech industry at all, there are fewer managers that can bring companies to, you know, $500 million value. So there are, but not so many. But you have to start from the basic. And our program was basically for entrepreneurs and, you know, for startup companies, which is a huge issue in life science especially, where we don't have managers or repeat that know actually the process of bringing a product to the market. It's a completely different process than the high-tech, but anyway. So that's the aim and still the aim of our product. I hope that we'll have as many startups, and some of them will become mid-sized companies, and maybe one or two of them will become large corporate companies. But I think we do have Israelis that can run corporations like Teva, and all the previous Teva CEOs were Israelis, by the way, and they did quite well. They brought the company to a nice value, and so there are Israelis that can do that. I don't think that always we have to go abroad and look for. There is a big, you know, when you bring to a startup, let's say a startup comes to a 50 million, and then always there is a discussion, do you need a US CEO, or the Israeli can bring CEO? It's an unanswered question, depends on the market of the startup, and I'm not sure that always there is a huge cultural difference between Israelis and US, although most of the Israelis have been in the States and know how to get along with Americans or so, but there's still a cultural difference that, and if you look at the most successful Israeli companies and all the companies that actually grew up, most of the CEOs were Israelis and not foreigners. Most of the CEOs were Israelis, I think 80 or 90% of them. So I don't think that there is a need. Maybe in specific companies, specific area, the board decided to change, you know, direction, and Teva is basically changing direction with Jeremy, and we'll all hear it next week when he presents his vision for the future, but I'm not sure that's typical for all companies. You know, you have Machteshi Magan, that is a huge company, and you have many Israeli companies, very successful, that are run by Israeli CEOs. So, okay, that's my opinion.
We'll take another question. Oh, you want to comment?
Just for the sake of clarity and maybe supporting that sometimes numbers of facts are valuable, both Checkpoint and Teva build themselves as truly global companies, so the management layer are global managers, were always global managers. So the fact that the CEO is Israeli or not is less important at this size. And there are other aspects, let's say the Tata Information System international VP is an Israeli, he just lives in Argentina. We had at SAP, Shai Agassi. I mean, Israeli managers capable to run large businesses exist. Not necessarily they should run an Israeli company. I mean, is Teva at all an Israeli company today just because they operate in Kfar Saba near my my hometown? Yeah.
I completely agree that the origin of the manager is maybe less important. However, I do feel, and this is I've published on this extensively. Israel, in comparison to other countries, is not growing its startups. It's usually cutting them at the exit point and the buy-in point, and not growing them much further. In comparison to other countries, if you take per 100 startup companies after $30 million, how many of them grow into become the $1 billion? And Israel is actually...
That's not right, you know, that's the impression that everybody talks about, that Israelis are selling companies too early. Go to the Silicon Valley, and we belong to a fund, that affiliate of fund, that one of the largest funds in the Silicon Valley, and look at their portfolio. They sell most of their companies. They don't grow them to large companies. You know, how many Instagram and Facebook, compare the numbers. That's not true. It's the same percentage in Israel and abroad and Boston and Silicon Valley. We have some companies that we grow to large companies, and you can mention Mellanox, Easy Chips, and etc., and other sectors, but it's the same percentage. Believe me, it was checked many times. Just that Israelis don't have patience.
I guess just one more comment on that. You know, if I actually look at the program I'm running, so it is about management of technology, entrepreneurship, and innovation. It seems actually easier to focus on educating people for entrepreneurship, even though it's very arguable if you can actually educate them for entrepreneurship. But when it comes to management of technology, which applies more for people who work in corporations, it seems less sexy. People want to talk about it less. It's a weird combination. Okay, because in the program you have to cater for different audiences, and it seems much easier to cater for the entrepreneurs than for the sort of corporate managers. So it's not necessarily the people who would run the $1 billion company, but even people who will be managers in corporations. There are quite a lot of them, but it seems a lot of people are attracted to the glory, if you wish, of the entrepreneurial world, even if they might not be actually suitable for that. But anyway, I want to take more questions now. You?
I just want to comment. You spoke a lot about the entrepreneurship in academia, which is completely the other. It's the opposite in a way, because academia, when I started my BA at IDC, they want you to think in a certain way, to write in a certain way. And entrepreneurship, it's all about thinking out of the box. One of the ways to bridge the gaps in many ways is to do an internship, which in Israel it seems like it's got lost on the way, I don't know, when we export the MBA programs from abroad. So first of all, my first question is, how do you overcome this? I mean, this is pretty clear that there has miscommunication between the academia and Israel. You know, when you have the experience and you work at a company, when you struggle with something that you are not familiar in an internship, there's a lot of added value because you can get to hear the industry and you can improve it, and then the next year you can know, what do I need as a manager? What happened to an internship in Israel and why it doesn't really exist?
Yes, I absolutely agree. It doesn't exist for a very simple reason, that if you look at MBA programs abroad, it would be mostly for people who don't work. So they come, they actually leave work for 2 years, they come for the first year, then they have the break between the years. That's normally when they do the entrepreneurship. And then they come back, and then with our students, it's a very different structure because 99% of them actually have jobs. So in that sense, I think it's different. I agree with you. Sort of doing internships is extremely important. You can learn a lot from that. It's a bit like actually consulting. Why? Because you get to learn a certain company, a certain structure, a certain issue for 3 months or so. It's enough to understand, at least to some degree, what's going on and to have some impact. So I agree completely. Internship is wonderful. I don't know how we can embed that into our current MBA structure.
Just one comment quickly regarding that. It's a requirement in most of the universities, and I took courses in Harvard as well in the business school. It's one of the requirements as well, and I did my MBA at Tel Aviv University. It's a requirement not because that you need to gain an experience. It's a requirement because you need to struggle with something that you are not familiar with. And you get credit for it. So it's instead of courses and things. And I think the added value for the students, it's much higher on many levels.
Yeah, actually, Iris explained it. This is indeed the problem with the Israeli students. Now, to now show you some light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train coming from the opposite direction, is the Technion will start this summer to offer a 2-month program, a module called Excellence, in partnership with foreign MBA programs who want to send a couple of students for to experiment entrepreneurship and innovation studies in Israel as part of their program, including a 3 days a week internship in one of the Israeli companies. So that will be how we shall start, and I assume the others will adapt the same. I mean, Benny for sure will support this. For foreign students, this is, we should offer it. For the Israeli students, I mean, in a class like in Excellence will be only 30% Israeli students who can afford to take a full-time MBA, but not for a full year. It's 2 months, 2 days courses, 3 days internship, altogether 10 academic points as part of their program. And already Yale and a couple of other universities are enrolled in this. So if you have still friends that want to go, they can come this summer to the Technion and probably next summer to Tel Aviv as well.
So I don't look at it. I'm not from the business school at the Technion, and not a faculty of the Tel Aviv University, and I don't agree with all these excuses. Really, I don't agree, and I think that when you have something that you want to look at,
life sciences or mathematic sciences and all of that, or engineering. There is a shortage of that type of people throughout the industry, and this stereotype of startup nation, of entrepreneurs that are like Mark Zuckerberg or people like that, in a way we didn't talk today about people like Moshe Lichtman or Muli Eden, who did go to study engineering. We didn't talk about how to make tech studies sexy and attractive. Do you have any ideas and thoughts about that?
I think that I completely agree. That start not just the university, it starts in elementary school. You know, when we graded, I don't know, in mathematics, number, whatever, you know, we must take a deep look in our education system in Israel. Otherwise, in 30 years from now, we won't have any engineers, scientists, and etc. Of course, we have to make all these top professions or whatever education more sexy, and the way we can make it sexy by combining the industry into the academia, you know, so they feel like a real life. But it's our task, all of us around this table, to do it and to push it every day, because that's the key issue, the education. I completely agree.
Yes, I can also comment on that. I mean, when I heard the talks of the morning, for example, at some point you think, okay, we know the world is going through a revolution. We know that things are changing enough, you know, it's boring, we know that. Now let's talk about the content. And the content is the various disciplines, okay, is it life sciences or financial technologies or whatever. So I completely agree that we need to have more people like that. In this session, we sort of focused on management of innovation, which is MBA, which is for people who already have most of them, this kind of degree. But I completely agree with you. Other questions? Okay, so thank you for listening and sharing. Thank you.